when you're growing up in this business, it's all about learning about yourself.
It was also challenging.
It was certainly a challenge. Everybody can make a cup of coffee. Everybody can make a bed. And so as long as we're true to those values, we be the best that we can be. And true service is something that comes from the heart.
Всем привет! Третий выпуск нашей программы мы записали с генеральным менеджером отеля Ритц-Карлтон Астана, с мистером Тони Ковини. В этом выпуске вы узнаете, почему так важно проявлять заботу по отношению к своим сотрудникам, стоит ли бизнесу копировать ценности и сервис Ритц-Карлтона, а также о том, как отыскать свое любимое дело. Всем приятного просмотра!
Hi, Tony. Thank you very much for your time. I know you have a very busy schedule. So let's start from the beginning. Can you please tell where you're from and when and how did you start your career path in hospitality?
Sure. Have we got enough time?
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Well, I'm Irish. So I was born actually in the south of Ireland and had a very happy childhood. I raised in a large family, 7 children. On a farm, and so I think I had an appreciation for the outdoors from a very young age, and certainly learned about team dynamics from an early age, having come through, being raised in a very big family. My parents, especially my father, encouraged us to try everything, and eventually over time we would find our passion in life. My initial thoughts about a career were something in art, or potentially architecture, graphic design, or like fine art. So I actually applied to one of the best art colleges in Ireland, and I was accepted. And about 2 months before my final exams in school, I got a little bit of an insecurity. And I said to myself, I don't know if I could make a career because I wasn't sure if I was good enough.
Okay.
And so I asked my mother, what do you think I should do? So she said, well, look, you like people, you're a good communicator, you're a good team player. I think maybe the hotel business would work for you. So I thought about it, and I thought about my life as a child as well. I was always in the kitchen. I was always helping my mother. I was always, our house was a busy place, and we always had guests coming in and out, and we used to do a lot of dinner parties, and a lot of relatives used to come, and so we always had a lot of activity. And I said, okay, this might be good. So I applied to hotel school, and I was accepted. So I started my career in Ireland, and I spent really the first 15 years or so working in Ireland. I finished my work in Ireland with a multinational, the Four Seasons Group, hotel group, and I had the great pleasure of traveling overseas, and our first international move was to Australia.
So how old were you first time you moved to Australia?
I would have been 35
So it's
at that stage, yeah.
Okay.
So by that time I had 3 children as well. So like one of the reasons I spent so long in Ireland is probably because we were having children and starting a family. And so I figured, well, while the children are young and we don't have too many commitments, let's go.
So you became a true professional in the age of 35. You decided to move to another country with 3 kids, and it's a very good example.
Yeah, but I think to your point, I think you often maybe you don't know what you really know until you go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you see the impact you have on others. And so I think that was kind of my experience in Australia. Like I arrived at this hotel, also a Four Seasons property, but an older hotel, a very large property. We had 530 bedrooms.
How many employees?
We had 300, not that much, surprisingly. I'll get to that in a minute. But working in a hotel like that, which was also extremely busy, high occupancy, lots and lots of people coming and going, different types of customers, business. We had cruise ships coming into Sydney Harbour. We had rock bands. We had convention business, all sorts of things. And I tell you, I got fit in those 2 years I was there because we were running a lot. I was the director of rooms in that hotel. And I like to think of those 2 years as kind of work hard, play hard. We had a great lifestyle as well, and we lived in a very nice place. And of course, just the lifestyle in general in Sydney and in Australia is pretty good.
So from 2013 until 2015, you've been working in Australia
That's
for,
right.
for Season Sydney. Then I believe you moved to Saudi Arabia.
I did. So I had a
That's
call.
a
Yeah.
total.
I had a call the summer of 2015 from our regional HR director who was based in Singapore. He said, Tony, I've got good news and I've got some news that you might find challenging. I said, okay. So he said, the good news is that we would like to promote you to hotel manager. And I said, fantastic. He said, the challenging news is that it's in Saudi Arabia. I was like, okay. I said, I don't know anything about Saudi Arabia. So I knew it was hot. But I'd become used to hot weather from Australia anyway. But I remember I went on my iPhone and I looked up the hotel and I saw this incredible building
It was in Riyadh.
in Riyadh. And I immediately said, I have to go there.
Okay.
So I didn't think too much about it. Obviously, I had to consult with the family. But we didn't take too long to make the decision. And 2 months later, I was in Riyadh. Now, arriving into a very Islamic culture, combined with some unique things to Saudi Arabia, the fact that you're in the middle of the Arabian desert,
It was also
certainly-
challenging.
It was certainly a challenge. I was welcomed with open arms. I came into a hotel where our general manager had already left, and so we kind of had a blank canvas.
It was a big property.
Yeah, 275 rooms, but I had 800 employees. So it was a very large team. And interesting because it was multicultural, mostly Islamic, but from,
From
all over
all over-
Africa,
yeah.
all over, the Far East. We had, all sorts of different
cultures.
nationalities and cultures. And then, of course, our guests were Arabian mostly. If not
Locals,
from Saudi, they were
yeah.
from Bahrain or from Kuwait or wherever they
UAE.
would come from. Yeah, a busy hotel. What was interesting about that property is the property itself is owned by Prince Al Walid bin Talal, who's a member of the Saudi royal family, who also happens to be a co-owner of Four Seasons globally.
chain.
And so the chance to work directly for the person who is one of the biggest shareholders in the company was also a unique opportunity, and I took it with both hands, and it was an experience I'll never forget. I was there for almost 4 years.
So from 2015 until 2019.
Yeah.
And then you decide to join Marriott International and Ritz-Carlton Astana. Can you please tell? a little
Yeah,
bit
so
more about
I suppose the genesis of this is there's probably two parts to this. One is I had been looking for a transfer out of Riyadh for quite some time, and it just wasn't happening quickly enough for me. And I had done a number of interviews for different Four Seasons properties around the world, from Thailand to Santa Fe in New Mexico to London. I was driving my wife crazy, because I'd come home from work and I'd say, "Oh, how do you feel about going to Santa Fe, Mexico?" And she'd say, "Okay." And then, a couple of weeks later, I'd say, "Oh, how do you feel about moving to London?" So I think, I'm fortunate to have a wife who's extremely patient, and she knows when I'm serious about something, and she knows when I'm joking about something. By coincidence, I had a good friend who was working for Marriott International, and he had been the general manager at the Ritz-Carlton in Dubai, and had recently moved to Abu Dhabi in a regional role. And he and I had been talking, but his wife is also a headhunter. And so, I didn't make the connection until afterwards, but I had conversations with both of them and then realized that they were actually married. And so he really talked me into it. He said, "Look, Ritz-Carlton is looking for fresh talent at GM level. And, the company's growing very rapidly. It was like shortly after they had acquired the Starwood Group as well. So there was a lot of moving around of leaders and teams within Marriott at that time. And he identified an opportunity for me. And so initially I interviewed with the Middle Eastern regional team, and then I was referred then to the European team, or the far European, Eastern European team. for this opportunity here in Astana. So my first reaction when I had the call about this hotel was, well, where is it? I had heard about Astana. I didn't know what country it was in. That's the truth. So I had to do a bit of research, and I think that when I started researching this hotel, I obviously started looking at the ownership structure, and I realized that it wasn't just this hotel that they owned. They also had the Ritz-Carlton in Moscow and in Vienna, and they also have another branded hotel here in Kazakhstan as well. So I had always been curious about Ritz-Carlton as a brand as well, and I think in most of the locations that I worked, I had, the Ritz-Carlton was kind of our biggest rival, you know.
What was your first impression when you just landed here? You came to
an overwhelming sense of welcome. And it wasn't just from the ladies and gentlemen of the Ritz-Carlton necessarily, it was more the Kazakh welcome, which is obviously unique to me. It was unique, like such a warm culture. So that helps me do my job every day. You know, I don't have to teach people how to be hospitable.
Yep.
You know, they're naturally gifted in that area, and that isn't always true. You know, it was a bit more of a challenge in my last location. Whereas here, people want to come to work, they want to be welcoming, they want to make people feel happy, and all of that marries beautifully with the Ritz-Carlton philosophy, you know. So, of course, those early weeks and months were a big learning curve for me, because you're trying to reorientate with a different brand that has a slightly different way of doing things. But what impressed me so much about Ritz-Carlton is it's sort of the infrastructure that they have around its core values.
In Ritz-Carlton corporate culture, the most important asset is its ladies and gentlemen, or employees, but you call them ladies and gentlemen. Why it is so important to take a good care of your employees, ladies and gentlemen?
Yeah. Well, ultimately, they're taking care of our guests. So if we can't take care of them, we've no chance of taking care of our guests. So if you work it back, I suppose, from let's say the end user being the customer, in order for them to feel good about their experience and about spending money in our hotel, our ladies and gentlemen need to be feeling good and need to be confident and take ownership of the guest experience. And and inevitably in any hotel business you're going to have problems, right, from time to time. But it's all about how you respond to those things, and we face challenges every day that we come to work because every day is different.
How do you train your ladies and gentlemen to anticipate the needs of your guests?
I think in today's world, we're highly engaged, involved in all of our ladies and gentlemen's lives, sometimes outside of work even, because we realize the importance of being connected. But I would say that what's changed over the last 20 to 30 years is that service has become something that is greatly valued by travelers. And true service is something that comes from the heart. And when you make that connection with a customer and they feel like you really care, it's like gold, you know. And so this is why we prioritize and we give space and scope to our ladies and gentlemen to be themselves, to allow their personalities to come to the fore, and to create what we call wow moments, where you do something for somebody that really makes a difference in their lives. We refer to it as the Ritz-Carlton mystique.
Okay.
And it's like that little bit of magic dust, you know. And it's that thing, everybody can make a cup of coffee.
Yep.
Everybody can make a bed. Everybody can provide you with those basic things, like every hotel, I mean. But not every hotel can provide lasting memories.
Attention.
And it's about details, but it's also about genuine care. So in our motto, we talk about genuine care and comfort of our guests being our highest mission.
Yep.
And so we believe it, and we live it, because that's what people are paying for. Because let's face it, there's lots of choices of hotels, right? And there's a lot of people who have the money to be able to stay in these hotels, but they have to make a choice, and often their choices are emotional ones. They're based on, that doorman or concierge that they meet every time they come to the hotel, and they feel recognized and valued, not because of their money, but because of who they are.
Yeah. How do you develop your ladies and gentlemen? Do you have like mentoring system?
I suppose it's funny. I just came here before this interview after spending an hour with a group of new managers, and trying to tease out of them kind of what their version of leadership is. And there were kind of two important words that came up a lot. First was empathy, and the second was gratitude. So this question of empathy and how important that is in any leader, I can't overstate the importance of how crucial it is to be connected with the team that you work with, and to have an open door policy so that they can approach you if they need to. Especially with today's generation, a younger generation, they need validation. They need somebody who listens to them, and yes, somebody who can give them direction as well. We are in a business that requires sometimes quite exacting standards, but I suppose I'm a leader that likes to take a risk, and you know, again, this year in particular, we've taken risks and we've tried new things and we've been innovative, and we've explored the talent that we have within our team, and we've allowed people to express themselves. Maybe in a different year, it might have been difficult to do that. So I think that's been one of our successes in 2020, has been our ability to adapt and try new things and be a little bit bold.
Well, our local business,
Yep.
how they can try to implement something similar to the Ritz-Carlton and make their service better.
Well, look, the advice that I give to my own team is, and this might sound unusual,
Okay.
don't worry too much about what other people are doing. Focus on what you're doing. We're all smart enough, and we all have enough experience to know what we're doing is good or not good, depending. And so I think, you know, the one thing I do say to our team, be they salespeople or be they operations people, focus on what you're doing. Be clear in your message. You know, if we're going to make improvements to our breakfast, for example, let's really focus on breakfast. What's good, what's not so good. Put yourself in the shoes of the customer and make it great. You know, because I think we would all know when we've had a great breakfast.
Okay.
I don't need to go down the street to the nearest cafe really to figure out what I need to do with our hotel. It's not that I don't have an appreciation for the competition. I do, and believe me, I dine out just as much as everybody else, but I'm not fixated on it.
Okay.
And I think this is maybe a lesson that's replicated in many industries. Like a lot of people, they talk about in the technology business, so Apple and Google, IBM, and these companies. So the one thing that always comes back about Apple, and I'm an Apple user, is that they're always focused on beating themselves,
Okay.
and not focused on beating anybody else. You know, I recently started reading a book. It's all about leadership, but it's about sustainable leadership. And you know, in a world that is unfortunately governed by metrics, trying to be number one, what is that? You know,
Yep.
because ultimately successful businesses the world over are the ones that are typically there the longest. Like, we can be the best, but what does it really mean? We can be number one today and we can be number 3 tomorrow. What does it really mean? In the end, we're competing with ourselves. We're trying to be better. And so I always say, like, take the long-term view of being a great business, like to always be working at the highest level that we're capable of working.
Okay.
And be true to ourselves and our values. And believe me, there's plenty of great values in the Ritz-Carlton brand. And so as long as we're true to those values, we be the best that we can be, that's enough for me. I don't have to be number one on a list of 50 people, or 50 companies. Like, it doesn't really mean anything to me. What means a lot to me is that we're being the best that we can be. We're getting the best out of each other as a team. And ultimately our customers having the best possible experience. That's all that matters to me, really. So if I'm giving advice to a company that's starting out, I would say the same thing.
Okay.
Don't try to copy anybody else. There may be things that you admire
Okay.
and that you might try and replicate. But if you're fixated on your competition and you try to copy them all the time, you're then kind of a prisoner to that competition.
Okay.
Because every time they move, you have to move.
Yeah.
And there comes a point in your evolution where you say, well, why don't we go this way? Let's stop following that example. Maybe we can do it better. So if I left the Ritz-Carlton tomorrow and I decided to open a hotel down the street, would I try and compete with the Ritz-Carlton? I might want to be in the luxury segment, but I mean,
you'll do it your
I'll be the
own
best
way.
I can be, you know,
Yes.
and I'll do it with a heart and a half, and I would encourage my team to do the same. But would I try and copy the Ritz-Carlton? No.
Okay, thank you. So my last question will be, what kind of one advice you can give to our viewers and for those who would like to work in hospitality or hotel industry from your experience point of view?
We want you. Look, I think this is an exciting business. It's a very broad industry. Hotels are like small ecosystems. Some people don't realize, but it's not all about service. Yes, service to each other and to our customers, but we have engineers, we have HR professionals, we have sales and marketing professionals, we have people in PR, we have food and beverage servers, we've got chefs, we've got housekeepers, we've got people working in security. There's so many careers in a hotel. And so I think, if I think back now, it was a great choice for me because I had an opportunity even in those early years to explore many of those different careers. And in the end, I've kind of taken pieces from each and I've been able to build my character and build my leadership style. And ultimately, I'm now, I've got to a general manager position, which is wonderful. And I'm able to practice all of those things I've learned. Did I like everything along the way? For sure not. I think that's part of life's journey, right? You're going to have aspects of your career and your job that you enjoy, and you have certain things that you don't enjoy so much. You're going to work for people that you love working for, and you're going to work for people that you hate working for. And that's life. So the bit of advice I would give to anyone coming into our business is that have a very open mind. Give yourself the time to develop. A great general manager taught me that, when you're growing up in this business, you have to, it's all about learning about yourself. It's all about coming to a realization of the sort of person you are and how you can then apply that type of personality to the business and just to be yourself at the end. I spent so many years in my early career trying to please people. And now I kind of do things how I want to do them. It's not that I don't take feedback, of course I do. But I try and be true to myself and my own values, and obviously I try and align those values with the company's values, and I wouldn't be here if they weren't already aligned. So, so simple advice is just be a little bit patient, allow yourself to explore many different things, and you will find your passion too, because everybody does in the end, I hope. Might not be 100%, but you'll certainly find something that you enjoy getting out of bed in the morning to do. And the hotel business provides so many options that I think it's a great place to start. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and this
pleasure.
interview.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that our viewers, they will love your advices. And it was a pleasure meeting you.
Ну как вам выпуск? Не забывайте подписываться на мой канал, ставьте лайки и пишите комментарии. Всем спасибо.